The auction sold defective aliens. One human bought them all. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The cargo bay of Station 17 smelled like desperation and industrial cleaner, a combination that made most species wrinkle whatever they used for noses. Marcus Dean stood at the back of the crowd, arms crossed, watching the auctioneer's platform with an expression that could have been carved from stone. Around him, dozens of traders, slavers, and opportunists from across the galaxy pushed and shoved for a better view of the merchandise. This was the forgotten corner of civilized space, where the Galactic Council's laws were more suggestions than rules, and where anything or anyone could be bought for the right price. Marcus was not supposed to be here. As a human freight hauler, he should have been 3 systems away, delivering medical supplies to a mining colony. But his navigation computer had malfunctioned, forcing an emergency stop at this station, and what he had stumbled upon had changed everything. The auction was in full swing, and the items on the block were not cargo or technology. They were people, living, breathing beings, branded as defective and sold to the highest bidder. The auctioneer, a Veldran with skin like polished obsidian and 4 arms that gestured dramatically with each pitch, was working himself into a frenzy. He stood behind a podium that projected holographic images of the merchandise, his voice amplified through the station's antiquated speaker system. Then the auctioneer said, his voice dripping with theatrical disdain, "Lot number 47. A Brenthak female, approximately 20 cycles old, missing her secondary arms due to a genetic defect. Useless for heavy labor, but might have value in waste management or other low-priority tasks. We'll start the bidding at 50 credits. The crowd barely stirred. A few half-hearted bids came from the back, more out of boredom than genuine interest. The Brenthak stood on the platform, her 4 eyes downcast, her remaining 2 arms wrapped protectively around her torso. Her skin, which should have been a vibrant blue, had faded to a sickly gray. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. The auctioneer continued, moving through his inventory with the efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Each lot was more heartbreaking than the last. A Kelton male with a damaged vocal synthesizer who could no longer communicate in the standard frequencies. A young Porathian whose wings had been clipped, rendering him flightless. A Centauri whose bioluminescent patterns had failed to develop properly, making her an outcast among her light-based society. Marcus watched it all, his anger building like pressure in a sealed container. He had seen many things in his 15 years hauling cargo across the galaxy, but this was something different. This was systematic cruelty dressed up as commerce. The auctioneer called out, "Lot number 52. A Draconite adolescent, male, hatched without the ability to breathe fire. Completely worthless for military applications or mining operations. However, he is surprisingly strong and could serve adequately as a pack animal. Opening bid is 30 credits. The Draconite, barely more than a child by his species standards, stood shaking on the platform. His scales, which should have shimmered with inner heat, were dull and cold. No one bid. The auctioneer's expression soured. Marcus did the math in his head. He had approximately 90,000 credits in his account, money he had been saving for years to upgrade his ship's aging jump drive. It was everything he had worked for, every long haul through dangerous space, every missed opportunity to take time off and enjoy life. But looking at the faces of the beings on that platform, he realized that some things mattered more than a new engine. He raised his hand. The auctioneer noticed immediately, his 4 eyes widening with surprise. "We have a bid. 30 credits from the human in the back." "Not just for him," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly across the cargo bay. "I'll take the whole lot. Every single one you've got listed as defective." The crowd went silent. Even the background hum of the station's life support seemed to quiet. The auctioneer's mandibles clicked together in confusion. "I am not certain I understand. Human, you wish to purchase all of the defective merchandise?" "Every single one," Marcus confirmed. "Whatever the total comes to, I'll pay it." The auctioneer's confusion rapidly transformed into barely concealed greed. His fingers danced over his datapad, calculating quickly. There are 47 individuals in total designated as defective or damaged goods. The combined asking price would be 2,100 credits. However, for a bulk purchase, I could offer you a discount. Shall we say 1,800 credits for the entire lot? Marcus had expected it to be more. These beings had been devalued so thoroughly that their combined worth was less than a used cargo loader. It made his stomach turn. Deal, he said. The auctioneer practically glowed with satisfaction. Excellent. If you will approach the payment terminal, we can finalize the transaction immediately. As Marcus made his way through the crowd, he could feel eyes on him. Confusion, curiosity, suspicion. One trader, a Velcorn with cybernetic enhancements covering half his face, grabbed Marcus's arm as he passed. What's your game, human? The Velcorn growled. These defects are worthless. You planning to flip them somewhere? Marcus pulled his arm free. No game. Just business. It was not entirely true, but it was the answer most likely to keep people from asking more questions. In a place like Station 17, appearing to have a profit motive was safer than appearing to have a conscience. The payment went through without issue, the credits transferring from Marcus's account in a single, stomach-churning transaction. The auctioneer provided him with ownership documentation and transfer codes, all disgustingly official and legal according to the local statutes. Your merchandise will be delivered to your vessel within the hour, the auctioneer said with a smile that showed too many teeth. Pleasure doing business with you, human. Marcus did not respond. He took the datapad with the documentation and left the cargo bay, his mind already racing ahead to the logistical nightmare he had just created for himself. His ship, the Meridian Runner, was a mid-sized freight hauler designed for cargo, not passengers. It had minimal life support accommodations beyond his own small cabin. He would need to completely reconfigure the cargo holds to house 47 individuals from different species, each with their own environmental and dietary requirements. The station's commercial district was a maze of shops and kiosks, most of them selling contraband or items of questionable legality. Marcus moved through it with purpose, stopping at a supply depot that specialized in life support equipment. The owner, a Turian female named Kessa, raised her eyebrow ridges when she saw his shopping list. You setting up a colony ship? She asked, her mandibles clicking with amusement. Something like that. Can you have it all delivered to Docking Bay 12 within the hour? For the right price, I can have it there in 30 minutes. Marcus transferred the credits, watching another chunk of his savings evaporate. He bought atmospheric processors, portable sleeping units, food synthesizers, medical supplies, and a dozen other necessities. By the time he was done, he had spent another 12,000 credits. Back at the Meridian Runner, he began the frantic work of converting his cargo holds into livable spaces. The ship's AI, a relatively simple system he had named Archie, helped him recalculate life support distributions and power requirements. Marcus, I feel obligated to point out that this ship was not designed to support this many life forms simultaneously, Archie said in its calm, measured voice. The strain on our environmental systems will be significant. I know, Archie. We'll manage. Additionally, our food stores are insufficient for a passenger load of this size. I calculate that we have enough provisions for approximately 4 days of travel, assuming minimal rations. We'll figure it out. First things first, let's get them aboard and comfortable. The word comfortable was generous. The best Marcus could do was create spaces that were not actively hostile to life. He sectioned off areas of the cargo hold based on atmospheric requirements, setting up partitions and installing the newly purchased environmental processors. It was rough, improvised work, but it would have to do. 50 minutes after the auction, the station's cargo handlers began delivering his purchase. They came in groups, herded like livestock, their eyes dull with resignation. Marcus met them at the airlock, checking each one off against his datapad and directing them to their assigned areas. The Brenthak female from earlier was in the first group. Up close, Marcus could see the surgical scars where her secondary arms had been removed, probably at birth. She looked at him with a mixture of fear and confusion. You are the human who purchased us, she said, her voice soft and melodic despite her obvious distress. That's right. My name is Marcus. What's yours? She hesitated, as if unused to being asked such a question. I am called Venna. Well, Venna, welcome aboard the Meridian Runner. I know this is all confusing right now, but I promise you, things are going to get better. She did not look convinced, but she nodded and allowed him to guide her to one of the sleeping units he had set up. The others followed, a parade of broken bodies and damaged spirits. The Draconite child who could not breathe fire. A Centauri woman whose skin remained stubbornly dark. A Kelton male who communicated through hastily written notes on a datapad. An elderly Parathian whose wings hung useless at his sides. Each one had a story written in scars and missing pieces. Each one had been deemed unworthy by a galaxy that valued function over feeling. And now each one was Marcus's responsibility. When the last of them had boarded, Marcus sealed the airlock and began the departure sequence. Station 17's traffic control barely acknowledged his request to leave, and within minutes, the Meridian runner was pulling away from the station, its engines humming with the strain of the additional mass. Marcus stood in the cockpit, looking back at the cargo holds full of frightened, confused people. He had no plan beyond getting them away from that awful place. He had no idea how he was going to feed them all, or where they could go, or what would happen when his credits ran out. But he knew he had done the right thing. As the station shrank in the rear-view display, Marcus allowed himself a long breath. Then he activated the ship-wide intercom. "Attention, everyone. I know you're all scared and confused. I know you don't know who I am or what I want from you. So let me make this clear. I am not your owner. I bought you because it was the only way to get you out of that place. As far as I am concerned, you are free. You are passengers on this ship, not cargo, not slaves, not property. When we reach a safe location, you will be free to go wherever you want. Until then, I will do everything in my power to keep you safe and comfortable. If you need anything, let me know. We are all in this together now." The silence that followed was profound. Marcus waited, wondering if anyone would respond. Finally, through the intercom, he heard a voice. It was Venna, the Brinthak female. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why would you do this?" Marcus thought about how to answer that. The truth was complicated, tied up in his own past, in losses and failures and a deep-seated need to do something that mattered. But he settled for a simpler version. Because someone had to, he said. It was not a complete answer, but it was honest. In the cargo holds, he could hear the sound of quiet conversation beginning, the first tentative words exchanged between people who had been stripped of their dignity and were now trying to understand what had just happened to them. Marcus set a course for the nearest neutral space station, a journey that would take approximately 6 days at their current speed. It would give him time to figure out a real plan, to contact people who might be able to help, and to learn more about the 47 souls now depending on him. The first day was chaos. The environmental systems, pushed beyond their design specifications, began to show strain. The atmospheric processor for the methane-breathing Keltons kept shutting down, forcing Marcus to spend hours rerouting power and manually resetting circuits. The food synthesizers, cheap models he had bought in haste, produced meals that were technically nutritious but ranged from unpalatable to actively disgusting. Marcus barely slept, moving from crisis to crisis, trying to keep everyone alive and as comfortable as possible. Archie helped where it could, but the AI was designed for navigation and cargo management, not life support for dozens of different species. On the second day, something changed. Marcus was in the lower cargo hold, trying to fix a malfunctioning water recycler, when he realized he was not alone. The Draconite child, whose name he had learned was Torvin, was watching him work. "Can I help?" Torvin asked, his voice small and uncertain. Marcus looked up, surprised. "You know anything about water recyclers?" "I know how to follow instructions, and I am good with my hands." Marcus considered for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, hand me that wrench. The one with the blue handle." Torvin moved quickly, his movements precise despite his young age. As Marcus worked, he explained what he was doing and why. Torvin listened intently, asking occasional questions. Within an hour, they had the recycler functioning again. "You are a fast learner," Marcus said, genuinely impressed. Torvin's scales seemed to brighten slightly at the compliment. "No one ever taught me anything before. They said I was useless without fire." "Well, they were wrong. You are plenty useful." Word spread quickly. By the third day, Marcus had volunteers helping with various tasks around the ship. Venna, despite having only 2 arms, proved remarkably adept at organizing the food distribution. The elderly Parathian, whose name was Grenvik, had extensive knowledge of various species' medical needs and set up a basic infirmary. The Kelton male, Soren, who could not speak in standard frequencies, turned out to be brilliant with electronics and helped optimize the ship's power distribution. Slowly, the Meridian Runner transformed from a chaotic disaster into something resembling a functioning community. People began to talk to each other, to share stories, to help one another. The cargo holds, once silent with despair, now hummed with conversation and even occasional laughter. Marcus found himself learning things he had never known about the galaxy's so-called lesser species. He learned that Brenthax used their secondary arms primarily for delicate artistic work, not heavy labor, which meant Venus' supposed defect actually made her more efficient at practical tasks. He learned that Draconites who could not breathe fire often developed superior problem-solving skills to compensate, making them excellent engineers and strategists. He learned that Centauri who lacked proper bioluminescence could see in a wider range of spectra than their glowing counterparts, giving them unique perceptive abilities. Every being he had rescued had been labeled defective for lacking something their species considered standard, but each one possessed abilities and qualities that made them extraordinary in other ways. The galaxy had thrown them away because they did not fit a narrow definition of normal, blind to the value they actually possessed. On the fourth day, as Marcus was checking the navigation systems, Archie alerted him to an incoming communication. It was on an official Galactic Council frequency, which was unusual this far from core space. Meridian Runner, this is Patrol Ship Valorant. We have received a report that you departed Station 17 with unlicensed cargo. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded for inspection. Marcus felt his blood run cold. The Galactic Council officially opposed slavery, but they had a complicated relationship with stations like 17, which operated in legal gray zones. If the patrol ship boarded them and found 47 beings registered as purchased property, even if Marcus's intentions were good, the situation could become very complicated very quickly. He opened a channel. Valorant, this is Marcus Dean of the Meridian Runner. I am carrying passengers, not cargo. All are aboard voluntarily. There was a pause. Then a different voice came over the comm, female and crisp with authority. Captain Dean, our records show you made a substantial purchase at Station 17's auction house. Those purchases were registered as property transactions, not passenger bookings. I am going to need you to explain the discrepancy. Marcus thought quickly. He could try to run, but the Valorant was almost certainly faster than his overloaded freighter. He could try to fight, but that would be suicide. The only option was the truth, or at least a version of it. Valorant, I purchased those individuals specifically to free them from that auction. They were being sold as slaves under the guise of defective merchandise. I had no legal mechanism to stop the auction, so I bought them instead. They are not my property. They are free individuals, and I am transporting them to a location where they can start new lives. Another pause, longer this time. Marcus imagined the patrol ship's captain conferring with her crew, checking regulations, trying to decide how to handle this unusual situation. Finally, the voice returned. Captain Dean, I am Captain Theravos of the Valorant. What you have described is highly irregular, but not technically illegal. However, I need to verify your claims. I am going to come aboard with a small team to interview your passengers and ensure they are there voluntarily. If you attempt to flee or resist, I will be forced to disable your vessel. Do you understand? Understood, Captain Voss. We will cooperate fully. Marcus switched to the ship-wide intercom. Everyone, listen up. We have a Galactic Council patrol ship that is going to board us. They want to make sure you are all here voluntarily and that I have not forced you into anything. I need you to tell them the truth. Tell them what happened at the auction. Tell them I bought you. And tell them whether you are here by choice or not. I am not going to tell you what to say. Just be honest. In the cargo holds, he could hear the murmur of concerned voices. He did not blame them for being afraid. For all they knew, this could be another trap, another way for the universe to hurt them. 20 minutes later, the Valorant matched velocity with the Meridian Runner and extended a docking tube. Marcus met Captain Voss at the airlock. She was a Turian, tall and imposing in her blue and white council uniform, flanked by 2 armed security officers. Captain Dean, she said, her tone professional but not hostile. I appreciate your cooperation. This should not take long. Take all the time you need, Marcus replied. Captain Voss and her team spent the next 3 hours interviewing passengers. Marcus was not allowed to be present, which made sense, but also made him incredibly anxious. Everything depended on what his passengers told the council officers. Finally, Captain Voss returned to the cockpit where Marcus had been waiting. Her expression was unreadable. "Captain Dean, I have completed my interviews. Every individual I spoke with confirmed your account. They stated that they were being sold at auction, that you purchased them, and that you immediately informed them they were free to leave whenever they chose. Several of them spoke very highly of your efforts to keep them safe and comfortable during the journey." Marcus felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "So we are free to go?" "Not quite," Captain Voss said, and the tension came roaring back. "The situation is more complex than a simple verification. Those individuals were legally purchased under Station 17's local laws. While the Galactic Council opposes slavery, we recognize the legal autonomy of independent stations in non-core territories. Technically, you own them, and anything you do with your property, including freeing them, is your prerogative." "I do not want to own them," Marcus said firmly. "I never wanted that." "I understand. However, there is a process for manumission, the formal freeing of purchased beings. Without going through that process, they remain legally classified as your property, which could cause problems for them in the future. They could be recaptured, resold, or face legal challenges to their freedom." Marcus felt a headache building behind his eyes. "Okay, so what do I need to do to make this official?" Captain Voss pulled out a datapad. "I can process the manumission documents right now. I will need each individual's registration code from your purchase documentation, and they will need to verbally confirm their desire to be freed. Then I will file the documents with the Galactic Council, and they will be recognized as free citizens across all Council space." "Let's do it." The process took another 2 hours. Each of the 47 passengers came to the cockpit, stated their name and registration code, and confirmed that they wished to be legally freed from Marcus's ownership. Captain Voss recorded each statement and updated the Galactic Council's databases in real time. When it was done, she handed Marcus a datapad with confirmation documents. "Congratulations, Captain Dean. You have just freed 47 people. Officially, I should not have had to buy them to free them," Marcus said quietly. "No, you should not have," Captain Voss agreed. "But you did, and that took courage. What you did at that auction, spending your own money to save people you had never met, that is not something we see very often." She paused, then continued. "I need to ask you a question, though. What happens to them now? They are free, which is wonderful, but freedom does not solve all their problems. They still need places to live, ways to support themselves, and acceptance in a galaxy that has already rejected them once. What is your plan?" It was the same question Marcus had been avoiding since the moment he raised his hand at that auction. The truth was, he did not have a plan. Not a real one. "I do not know," he admitted. "I figured I would get them somewhere safe, and then help them figure out their next steps." Captain Voss nodded slowly. "May I make a suggestion? There is a colony called Haven, about 9 days from here. It was founded by refugees and outcasts from various species. They have a policy of accepting anyone who comes in peace, regardless of background or circumstances. It is not luxurious, but it is safe, and it is a place where your passengers could start over without facing discrimination." "Haven," Marcus repeated. "That sounds perfect. Can you send me the coordinates?" "Already done," Captain Voss said, transferring the data to his navigation system. "Good luck, Captain Dean. What you are doing is important, even if it feels impossible sometimes." After the Valorant departed, Marcus called another ship-wide meeting. He explained about the manumission process, about the fact that they were now legally free across all Galactic Council space, and about Haven. "It is not a paradise," he told them honestly. "From what Captain Voss told me, it is a hardscrabble colony where you will have to work to survive. But it is a place where you can live without being judged for your differences. A place where you can build lives on your own terms. Will you come with us?" Torvin asked, his young voice hopeful. Marcus had not thought that far ahead. His ship needed repairs, his savings were nearly depleted, and he had contracts waiting that were now weeks overdue. The practical thing would be to drop them at Haven and return to his normal life. But looking at the faces around him, at the fragile hope he saw there, he realized he could not just abandon them. Not after everything they had been through together. I will stay for a while, he said. Help you get settled. After that, we will see. The journey to Haven took 9 days, just as Captain Voss had predicted. During that time, the Meridian Runner became something Marcus had never experienced before, a home. Not just for him, but for everyone aboard. People who had been strangers became friends. Venna taught art classes, showing others how to create beautiful things with limited resources. Torvin and Soren worked together on improving the ship's systems, their different perspectives creating solutions neither could have developed alone. Grenvik held story circles in the evenings, sharing tales from his long life and encouraging others to share theirs. Marcus found himself drawn into the community in ways he had not expected. He had spent so many years alone, hauling cargo through empty space, that he had forgotten what it felt like to be part of something larger than himself. These people, whom the galaxy had labeled as defective and worthless, had more heart and resilience than anyone he had ever met. On the 8th day, as they approached Haven's system, the ship's proximity alarms went off. Marcus rushed to the cockpit to find 3 vessels on an intercept course. They were not Council ships. The IFF tags identified them as independent raiders, the kind of opportunistic predators that haunted the frontier regions. Freighter Meridian Runner, cut your engines and prepare to be boarded, a gravelly voice demanded over the comm. Resist, and we will blast you into particles. Marcus's mind raced. The Meridian Runner was not a warship. It had minimal shielding and no weapons beyond a single-point defense turret designed to shoot down debris. Against 3 raider ships, they had no chance in a fight. What do we do? Venna asked. She had come to the cockpit when the alarm sounded, along with several others. We have some options, Marcus said, pulling up tactical displays. We can surrender and hope they just take our supplies and leave. We can try to run and hope we can make it to Haven before they catch us. Or we can fight, which would be suicide. There is a 4th option, Soren said, writing quickly on his datapad. Deception. Marcus read the note. You think you can make it work? Soren's eyes glinted with determination. He nodded. Okay, Marcus said. Everyone get to your positions. Soren, you have 10 minutes. The Kelton male rushed to the engineering bay, Torvin following close behind. Marcus opened a channel to the raiders. This is Captain Dean of the Meridian Runner. We are experiencing power fluctuations and need time to safely shut down our engines. Give us 15 minutes. You have 5, the raider captain snarled. Soren and Torvin worked with frantic efficiency, their hands moving in perfect coordination despite their different physiologies. They rerouted power systems, reprogrammed sensor feeds, and made modifications to the ship's external appearance that would have taken Marcus days to figure out. With seconds to spare, Soren gave Marcus a thumbs up. Marcus took a deep breath and opened a wideband transmission, making sure all 3 raider ships could hear him clearly. Attention, raider vessels. This is Captain Marcus Dean of the Earth Defense Coalition Vessel Meridian Runner. You are in violation of multiple interstellar laws and have threatened a vessel under Coalition protection. I am authorized to inform you that this vessel is equipped with experimental quantum torpedoes, and I am prepared to use them if you do not immediately withdraw. There was a long silence. Then the raider captain laughed. A human freighter with quantum torpedoes? That is the worst bluff I have ever heard. Is it? Marcus asked calmly. Soren, activate targeting systems. The modifications Soren and Torvin had made suddenly activated. The Meridian Runner's external sensors began broadcasting what appeared to be weapons lock signatures. The ship's hull panels, rearranged and illuminated in specific patterns, created the visual impression of weapons ports opening. And most impressively, Soren had created a power signature that mimicked exactly what a charging weapons system would look like on a raider's scanners. It was all fake, an elaborate illusion created with smoke and mirrors. But it looked real enough to give the raiders pause. Last warning, Marcus said. Withdraw now, or I will fire. For a moment, Marcus thought they had called his bluff. Then, one by one, the raider ships began to pull back. They did not run, exactly, but they increased their distance to a much safer range. This is not over, human, the raider captain threatened. We will remember you. I am sure you will, Marcus replied, cutting the transmission. As soon as the raiders were out of weapons range, Marcus let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Around him, his crew erupted in cheers and laughter. "That was incredible," Venus said, her voice filled with amazement. "I thought we were finished." "Soren saved us," Marcus said, looking at the Kelton male with genuine respect. "That was some of the fastest, most creative engineering I have ever seen." Soren wrote on his datapad and held it up. "We saved us. Together." It was true. The solution had required Soren's technical genius, Torvin's quick hands, and Marcus's willingness to take a calculated risk. None of them could have done it alone. Haven appeared on the view screen an hour later, a green and blue world that looked remarkably like Earth in certain lights. As they entered orbit, they were hailed by the colony's traffic control. "Meridian Runner, this is Haven Control. We have been expecting you. Captain Voss sent word about your situation. You are cleared for landing at Pad 7. Welcome to Haven." The landing was smooth, and as the ship settled onto the pad, Marcus could see a reception committee waiting for them. A diverse group of beings from various species, all wearing the simple, practical clothing of frontier colonists. As the airlock opened, a human woman stepped forward. She was perhaps 60 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had seen more than their share of hardship. "Captain Dean, I am Sarah Morgan, one of Haven's founders. Welcome." Marcus shook her hand. "Thank you for accepting us on such short notice." Captain Voss explained your situation. "What you did, buying those people just to free them, that is the kind of spirit this colony was built on. We are honored to have them, and you, if you choose to stay." Over the next few hours, the passengers of the Meridian Runner disembarked and were shown to temporary housing while more permanent arrangements were made. The colony's administrators worked efficiently, assessing skills and needs, matching people with jobs and living spaces. Marcus watched it all with a sense of satisfaction mixed with melancholy. This was what he had wanted, to get them somewhere safe. But now that it was happening, he realized how much he was going to miss them. As the sun set on Haven's first day, Sarah Morgan found Marcus sitting alone near the landing pad, looking up at his ship. "Big day," she said, settling down beside him. "Yeah. What are you going to do now?" "Head back to freight hauling." Marcus had been thinking about that very question. His ship needed extensive repairs after the strain of the journey. His reputation among his former clients was probably destroyed by the missed contracts, and his savings were down to almost nothing. Starting over would be hard. But then again, he had already done the hardest part. "I have been thinking," he said slowly. "Those people I brought here, they are not the only ones being sold at places like Station 17. There are probably thousands more, scattered across stations and black markets throughout the frontier. People who are labeled as defective or damaged or worthless, when really they are just different." Sarah Morgan smiled. "You are thinking about going back for more. Is that crazy?" "Probably. But it is also necessary. Someone needs to do it, and you have already proven you can. I do not have the credits for another rescue. I spent almost everything I had on the last one. Haven is not a rich colony, but we take care of our own. And like it or not, Captain Dean, you are one of our own now." She handed him a datapad. "These are pledges from colonists who want to support your work. It is not much, but it is a start." Marcus looked at the numbers, feeling emotion tighten his throat. It was enough for repairs, supplies, and at least one more rescue operation. Why would they give this to me? They do not even know me. They know what you did, and many of them have their own stories of being rejected or cast out. They want to help others like them. She paused. "Also, several of your passengers have already found work here, and they insisted on contributing part of their first wages to your cause. They should be saving that money for themselves. They said the same thing about you at that auction." Sarah stood up, stretching her back. "Think about it, Captain. You have stumbled onto something important here. A way to make a real difference in the galaxy. Do not throw that away just because it is hard." That night, Marcus had dinner with his former passengers, now residents of Haven. They had gathered in one of the colony's common halls, a simple building with long tables and warm lighting. Someone had cooked a meal using a mix of ingredients from different species' cuisines, creating something that was uniquely Haven. Torvin sat next to Marcus, his scales now showing hints of healthy coloration. "Are you really leaving tomorrow?" "I have to get the ship repaired and resupplied. But I will be back. When? I do not know exactly, but I promise I will visit." Venus stood and tapped her glass for attention. Everyone, I would like to propose a toast. To Marcus Dean, the human who saw value where others saw only defects. The man who bought us not to own us, but to free us. You changed all of our lives, and we will never forget it. To Marcus, the room chorused, raising their glasses. Marcus felt his face flush with embarrassment. I just did what anyone should have done. But you are the one who actually did it, Grinvik said, his aged voice carrying wisdom. That is what matters. Not what people should do, but what you actually chose to do. The party lasted late into the night, filled with laughter, stories, and music from a dozen different cultures. Marcus found himself thinking that this, right here, was what the galaxy should be. Not separated by species or ability or conformity to arbitrary standards, but united in their shared experiences and mutual support. The next morning, as he prepared the Meridian runner for departure, Marcus found that he was not alone. Soren and Torvin had come to help with the pre-flight checks. You do not have to do this, Marcus said. You have earned your rest. Soren wrote on his datapad. We want to help. This ship is special to us. As they worked together one last time, Marcus made a decision. He activated his personal comm and sent a message to Sarah Morgan. I am in. Set up the fund, spread the word, and let me know where you need me next. I am going to do this right. Not just occasional rescue runs, but a real organization dedicated to finding and freeing those the galaxy has thrown away. Sarah's response came quickly. I was hoping you would say that. Welcome to the fight, Captain. Over the next 6 months, Marcus Dean became a legend in the darkest corners of civilized space. Working with a network of informants and sympathizers that Sarah helped him build, he identified auctions, slave markets, and trafficking operations across dozens of systems. His tactics evolved with each mission. Sometimes he bought his targets outright, as he had done at Station 17. Other times, he worked with local authorities to conduct raids. Occasionally, when legal options failed, he resorted to more creative solutions, using the skills he had learned from his extraordinary crew. The Meridian runner underwent extensive modifications. With funding from Haven and donations from freed individuals who had rebuilt their lives, Marcus upgraded the ship's life support systems, added proper passenger accommodations, and even installed a small medical bay. Grinvik came out of retirement to serve as the ship's doctor, unable to resist the call to help more people. Venna designed a symbol for their organization, a broken chain reforming into a bridge. It became known across the galaxy, a sign of hope for those who had been discarded and a warning to those who profited from suffering. Not every mission was successful. There were times when Marcus arrived too late, when beings he had hoped to save had already been sold and disappeared into the vastness of space. There were times when he was nearly captured, when his ship was damaged, when he questioned whether he could continue. But there were also victories. Hundreds of beings freed. Dozens of trafficking operations shut down. Entire stations forced to abandon their slave auctions under pressure from the growing abolitionist movement that Marcus's work had inspired. 1 year after that first auction, Marcus found himself back at Haven for the colony's annual celebration. The population had grown significantly, many of the new arrivals being people he had personally rescued. The colony had become a beacon of hope, proof that those labeled as defective or broken could build something beautiful when given the chance. During the celebration, Sarah Morgan announced a surprise. Everyone, if I could have your attention, please. We have a special presentation to make. Marcus, suspecting he was about to be embarrassed again, tried to slip away, but Torvin and Venna blocked his escape. Sarah continued. 1 year ago, Captain Marcus Dean arrived here with 47 refugees, all of whom had been purchased at a slave auction. Today, those 47 people are valued members of our community. They are teachers, engineers, artists, farmers, and friends. They have enriched Haven in countless ways. She gestured, and a group came forward, carrying something large covered in a cloth. But they are not the only ones Captain Dean has saved. In the past year, his organization, which we now call the Bridge, has freed over 500 individuals from slavery. And it all started here, with one human who was willing to spend everything he had to do what was right. The cloth was pulled away, revealing a sculpture. It showed a human figure, arms extended, breaking chains that dissolved into bridges leading in all directions. At the base was a plaque that read, Marcus Dean. who saw people where others saw property. The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus felt overwhelmed, not by the attention, but by the reminder of why he did this work. When the noise died down, he spoke. I appreciate this more than I can say, but I want everyone to remember that I am not special. I am just someone who decided to act when I saw something wrong. Every person in this colony could do the same. In fact, many of you already are, through your donations and support and willingness to welcome strangers. He looked around at the diverse crowd, seeing beings from dozens of species, many of them bearing the marks of rejection and hardship that had brought them to Haven. The galaxy told you that you were defective, that you were worthless, that you did not deserve dignity or freedom or happiness. But you proved them wrong. You built this place. You created a community based on acceptance and mutual support. You are living proof that the galaxy's definitions of worth are meaningless. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I am going to keep doing this work as long as I can, but I need all of you to keep doing yours. Keep building Haven. Keep showing the galaxy that there is another way. Keep proving that those who are different are not defects, but treasures waiting to be valued. The applause this time was not just for him, but for everyone, a recognition of their collective achievement. That night, as the celebration wound down, Marcus sat with his core crew, Torvin, Venna, Grinvik, and Soren. They had all chosen to join him on the Meridian Runner, forming the heart of the bridge's rescue operations. What is our next target? Torvin asked. He had grown considerably in the past year, his confidence and skills expanding in ways that his original society would never have allowed. There is a station in the outer reaches, Marcus said. Intelligence suggests they are holding a large auction next month, possibly the biggest we have seen. How many? Venna asked. Could be over 100 individuals. Soren wrote on his datapad. We will need more ships. Already working on it, Marcus confirmed. Sarah has been talking to some of the other refugee colonies. They are willing to lend support. This is getting bigger than we ever imagined, Grinvik observed, his old eyes wise and thoughtful. What started as one human's impulse buy at a slave auction has become a movement. It is bigger than me now, Marcus agreed. And that is exactly how it should be. The more people involved, the more lives we can change. They talked late into the night, planning their next operation, discussing logistics and risks and possibilities. But underneath the practical conversation was something else, a profound sense of purpose and belonging. These people, whom Marcus had bought on a whim, had become his family. The work they did together had given his life meaning in a way that hauling cargo never could. And the community they had helped build at Haven was proof that the galaxy could be better than it was. As he finally headed back to his ship to get some rest before departure, Marcus thought about that day at Station 17, standing in the back of that awful auction hall. He remembered the anger he had felt, the disgust at a galaxy that could treat people as disposable commodities. He had not planned to become a liberator. He had not set out to start a movement or change the galaxy. He had just seen people suffering and decided he could not walk away. Sometimes, he had learned, the most important choices are the ones you make without thinking, the moments when your heart overrides your head and you simply do what feels right. The galaxy had not changed overnight. There were still slave markets, still auctions, still beings treated as property. But there were also hundreds of people who were now free because one human had been willing to act. There was a colony where differences were celebrated rather than condemned. And there was a growing network of people committed to making the galaxy a more just place. It was not enough. Not yet. But it was a start. 3 months later, the Meridian Runner led a fleet of 5 ships to the Outer Reaches station. The operation was the most complex they had attempted, involving coordination with local reformers, carefully timed interventions, and a significant amount of credits pooled from communities across the frontier. When the auction began, Marcus and his team were ready. They did not bid this time. Instead, using evidence gathered over weeks of investigation, they exposed the station's operations to Galactic Council authorities, proving that the station had been trafficking beings from Council-protected systems, which made their actions explicitly illegal even in frontier territories. The Council intervened with overwhelming force. The auction was shut down. The station administrators were arrested. And the 137 beings who would have been sold that day were instead freed and given transport to Haven or other refugee colonies. It was a complete victory, the kind Marcus had only dreamed about. But as he watched the freed individuals board the transport ships, their faces showing the same mixture of confusion and fragile hope he had seen so many times before, he knew the work was far from over. There would be more auctions, more stations, more beings labeled as defective and discarded by a galaxy that valued conformity over compassion. The fight would continue, probably for the rest of his life. But Marcus Dean was ready for that fight. He had found his purpose, his family, and his place in the galaxy. He had learned that the most broken people often had the strongest spirits, that the most effective individuals often had the most to offer, and that one person, making one choice, could change hundreds of lives. As the Meridian runner set course for home, Marcus looked around the cockpit at his crew. Torvin was at the navigation station, his hands moving confidently over the controls. Venna was coordinating with the other ships, her voice calm and authoritative. Grenvik was in the medical bay, preparing to receive any passengers who might need care. And Soren was at the engineering station, constantly monitoring and optimizing every system. They were his family, his crew, his purpose. And together, they would keep fighting until every being in the galaxy had the chance to be valued for who they were, not discarded for what they lacked. The galaxy had tried to throw these people away, labeling them as defective and worthless. But Marcus had seen their true value. And in saving them, they had saved him too, giving his life meaning and purpose beyond anything he had imagined. It had all started with a simple decision at a slave auction, one human willing to spend everything he had to do what was right. And from that single choice, a movement had been born, a community had been built, and hundreds of lives had been changed forever. The auction had sold defective aliens, but one human had bought them all. And in doing so, he had discovered that the real defect was in a galaxy that could look at unique, valuable individuals and see only flaws. The beings he had freed were not broken. They were extraordinary, and they were proof that sometimes the things the world discards are the most precious treasures of all. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.